they make. But we tell you that placing premium on forgiveness, on forgiving others, is just not contributing to an effective society and a better way of life for people. Now, first, before I expand that on my cases, what is the goal of this debate? The goal of this debate is to determine what view is best placed on forgiveness, whether it be a personal level or a societal level. And first, let's standardize. When do we regret something? Of course, we regret something when it is no longer beneficial, when it does more harm than good to the majority of the people. And what does it mean by premium? Premium is where something is a higher price or cost, or something high in standard. Now, on to my thesis on how premium placed on forgiveness does more harm than good. Well, I tell you, when people have this kind of perspective that forgiveness can just be replaced as compensation. You can just say sorry for anything that you had done, may it be a minor or major crime. We tell you that people will tend to be swayed and tend to disregard their values and morals. Why is that? When there is a premium placed on something, or just a perspective that something is just should be, or it is done in a high standard, people tend to just do this than all these things that the values and morals that he or she has. What do we mean by this? What do you mean by this? Well, we mean that these people will tend to be passive. They will tend to be people who will not actually correct others, or think of maybe he should correct this person because he really did something bad, but just forgiving them, and just for the sake of forgiving them, not for the sake of going for a better place, or a better environment, or a better friendship between them. And my second point, if people get used to just forgiving, because with that kind of perspective of seeing that this forgiveness is just the best thing that we can do for people, the best thing we can do in the society, I tell you that what are laws for? I mean, if we can just say sorry for something that grave we did, then we actually just don't disregard our beliefs or principles. We also disregard the laws, even the authorities. We tell you that this does not contribute to an effective society. It does not contribute to an effective kind of living of people. And we tell you that it will not cause peace. I mean, forgiveness, of course, it sounds like, oh, create peace and create, everything bridge up together and everything becomes nice once again. But that's wrong, because putting this kind of perspective on forgiveness will just cause chaos. What do I mean by this? In every mistake, we need something to correct us, right? We need something that will correct that path or direction, because we need organization. We need something that will just create for the better of for all, not for just a person or an individual, but for everybody. So that's why we regret this kind of perspective on forgiveness, because it does not contribute to the benefit of everyone else. Now, to further expand that, we tell you that even on a personal level, we tell you earlier that it is better not to have that kind of perspective, and in a bigger range, in a wider perspective, we tell you with this kind of society that thinks that in every mistake there must be a proper discipline or action, there will be a more organized, a more proper kind of government, or a more proper kind of even relationship with each other, even in your group. And there will be more things. These mistakes will not be committed anymore, because of course you dealt with it. You did not just say sorry and look at forgiveness as the major thing that someone needs to do, even regardless of what kind of major or minor is the crime is. So we tell you on our side that it is better we regret that it is better to do not have that kind of perspective, or that premium placed on forgiveness, because it does not just make people's lives, people's lives people's lives more understandable and more easier to live, because not just that, but also for others, for their family or whatever group they're belonging. And also, why do we regret this? Because we see that with more harm it does, it can create chaos, or it can even create the more misunderstanding. So not just that, it actually, like what I said earlier, disregard the authorities and the laws. So by regretting this, we're actually acknowledging what the laws are saying, acknowledging the authorities, acknowledging whatever is should be followed. Because without this kind of perspective, we're having that perspective of more organized, more proper, and that is more beneficial for everybody, and that is not just, and that is more disciplinary. And we tell you that it is better because it applies to a wider range of perspective, a wider range of spectrum, and it is applicable for all people. And that's why we're proud to propose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Calling on leader also.
Here.
Work to need.
Nikki.
Mr. Chair, I want to start my speech by saying that forgiveness is a virtue that we should value no matter what.
You're here.
And that we're gonna directly negate what the Prime Minister has said, that not putting premium, that by regretting the premium placed on forgiveness is not gonna be helpful to the society. So a few rebuttals. The Prime Minister said that it is not beneficial, but we think that it is beneficial. Why? We think that by placing forgiveness on the individual and by forgiving others, it can then lead to societal change, which will be explained in my cases later on. And then she also said that we forgive and forgive, but in our side of the bench, we say that we believe that there should be an action alongside forgiveness. So we should not limit this debate by saying that we're just gonna only forgive the people who has done wrong to us. There should be an appropriate action and an action that is alongside that forgiveness. And then putting premium as defined by the Prime Minister, she said that putting premium is by giving importance. But to add to that, we put giving premium and placing premium on something is that we're putting it on a pedestal and giving more emphasis towards it, and that we romanticize this idea by saying that it is a virtue that all of us should aspire to have. And what then is a virtue? Virtue is a value that we see as something good that we should all possess, and we should see, and that everyone around us should possess as well. And that's how we define virtue. So what then is forgiveness? Forgiveness is establishing or re-establishing broken relationships or different conflicts that have been inflicted on individuals. So I have done something wrong, and that forgiveness is something that should be innate in different individuals, so that they can be able to grow. And we do not regret, because it is beneficial, and that it is beneficial to the individual and then to everyone. And that the goal of this debate is to assess whether we need forgiveness in society or not. And our stance is by forgiveness is a virtue that we should value no matter what. And my first case is that forgiveness leads to the maturity of the individual, which can then lead to the self-development. And putting premium on forgiveness helps a person mature. So what then is being mature? Being mature is by acknowledging the wrongs placed done to us or done from us by different individuals that they do normally in status quo. And maturity is tantamount to growth. Why is that? It is seen through forgiveness, and forgiveness is a manner of accepting that others or the self is wrong with his or her action. And let's take for example a man named Ives, wherein his friend Nikki has mocked him of his debating skills. Wherein he said that wherein Nikki says that, oh, you're not that good. You're not that good, and you're not that expected. You're not that as expected to. And this tells us that and then Ives has reconciled, and then Ives will reconcile this statement made to him by Nikki, and then this will lead to Ives's forgiveness. And in this forgiveness shows us that there is self-development. Self-development is seen there because he is able to filter out the different things that have been said to him by his friend, and that self-development can really transcend barriers that can help maintain and promote self-development, which is only achieved through maturity and forgiveness. But before my second case,
How can maturity and self-development be only exclusive on your side when we don't put premium in that, we realize the gravity of our mistakes and we change for the better?
we also see the gravity of forgiveness in our side because on our side, by putting premium on forgiveness, it means that we are going to acknowledge the things that the other people has done to us wrongly and reconciling them in order for us to grow. And because if we are just stuck in the idea that we are just going to stay the same, this will be counterproductive because it will only just damage the self. And when you damage the self and when you interact with others, it can then lead to no societal change. And my second case will now lead to that the self-development of the individuals can lead to societal change. So individuals, these are the people today who have been self-developed through maturity and who are matured and has forgiven the different things that have been done to them by different individuals. And by nuancing ourselves from the opening bench, from the opening government, we're saying that we're not just gonna forgive and forgive. Our forgiveness also has this action alongside with it, and that this implies that there should be an action with it. And this kind of action, alongside forgiveness, has this rehabilitative nature that can only be seen with action together with forgiveness. And another example is because forgiving Nikki, and this shows that there should be an action alongside with it because Ives having to be more empathetic to Nikki should be more empathetic to his feelings, and that is the action that is required in order for Ives to really forgive him. And with that, even if we have laws in society as defined by the Prime Minister, we think that a society that puts premium on forgiveness through different acts like in prison, wherein there is this rehabilitative nature that can be seen through the prisoners that has given a sentence in that particular example. It shows that by having self-development on the individual can definitely lead to societal change, and that's why we're proud to oppose.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Calling on Deputy Prime Minister, thank you.
has elaborated on how the premium placed on forgiveness affects the people and the society in a negative point of view. Before my rebuttals, I would like to reiterate how the PM defined premium. She defined premium as a compensation, as a way of fixing things, as a way that making things clean or giving it a clean slate. Going on to my rebuttals, yes, we value forgiveness. It is accepted. It exists. Yes, it does. We're not removing forgiveness in our vocabulary, but we don't accept the premium placed in forgiveness wherein we can see as this forgiveness compensates for the mistakes they've done because it does not. Another rebuttal is that we are not putting it in a pedestal. We are seeing it realistically. That forgiveness should not have the premium placed upon it because it does not, again, compensate for the mistakes that have been done. Another rebuttal is that the premium does not promote self-development because, as I have said again and again and again, it does not compensate for the mistakes done, which I am gonna make this point clearer on my cases later. With this in mind, regarding your second case, wherein it helps when you have reached the self-development and it would reach the progress, it would help in the progress of society, I would like to rebut that idea with that as this concept of putting premium placed on forgiveness hinders self-development, it would also it does not correlate to this progressiveness and self-development equate to the progress of society. With regards to your rebuttal, with regards to your other point regarding the society, as it puts a premium on forgiveness, wherein there is a concept in the prison that people are committed and that they could live their lives again, and we see that they are forgiven. But in reality, the sin is still exists. They still committed the crime. The crime is still listed even if he has served his sentence. It does not compensate. It does not make a clean slate. Going on to my first case, the premium placed on forgiveness affects the one who committed the mistake or the one who needs to be forgiven, in which this premium placed on forgiveness hinders learning and growth. Forgiveness does not compensate with what has happened before. As what I have said, we cannot see forgiveness as an exchange for the faults that we have done. We cannot see it as an eraser that just removes the things that we have done from our past. Having the mindset of having a premium on forgiveness, the one who has sinned or the one who has done wrong things will think that they didn't do anything wrong in the first place. So they have acquired the forgiveness that they aim to have. They think that the forgiveness given by those whom they committed their wrongdoings to gives them a free pass from what they have done in the past. Yes.
But doesn't forgiveness also happen within the one who committed the crime itself? Doesn't that lead them to acknowledge and also really reflect on the things that they have done and lead to self-development?
Here.
Yes, we agree that it does lead to self-development for those who forgives those who are sin. But on this case, we are focusing on the person who is asking for forgiveness. So I deem that your claim was quite invalid regarding this case. Continuing with my first case, thus enabling them to cloud their judgment into thinking that doing the mistake is okay, that it's alright, I didn't learn anything from it. It's done and it's okay. So I think that this kind of mindset hinders them from learning. And if they didn't learn anything from the mistakes that they've done before, thus hinders their growth as a person. Since they won't be able to apply the things that they've learned because they don't see it as something wrong because it compensates. They've been forgiven. So it's like, did it happen? So moving on to my second case. My second case elaborates on how the premium placed on forgiveness affects the one being afflicted because of the possibility that the past would repeat itself again. When you place premium on forgiveness, you pave way for more chances for mistakes. We can see that forgiveness compensates for the mistakes done in the past, as what I have said again and again and again. Thus, giving these people who have sinned against us, who has sinned against them, an image of a clean slate wherein they could repeat the mistakes they've said. Let's put it in the context of relationship, wherein there are both couples who loves each other, who are currently together, but once one has committed the mistake, once one has cheated, they would be probably apart. And more often than not, these couples would just fix things and be forgiven. As they would fix things and would see this thing as forgiven and would just try to work it out. But more often than not, these relationships often end the same way. You know why? Because it has happened in the past. And don't you think that this person have done it before? It is an evidence that this does not really gives them the learnings from what they've done before. When these people often encounter the same mistakes again and again, the cycle goes around. Again, that is what we regret. The premium placed on forgiveness. Quoting as Scott Fitzgerald in the Great Gatsby, you can't repeat the past. And then Nick Carraway said, but of course you can, old sport. That is why we are proud to perform.
Here!
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what's wrong with government? It seems they do not want to place a premium on forgiveness because they want to place a premium on something else instead. And that is selfishness. Thing is, they claim that forgiveness still exists on their paradigm. But you know what? Selfishness is better. They value compensation above relationships between people. And they seem to say that it is better to follow the law always by the book and serve justice to all. But this kind of analysis ultimately fails in the end because we have to understand that we serve justice, or they say equal compensation, only in the most direst circumstances when we do not have the capacity to forgive anymore. But that doesn't mean that we should automatically put away our premium on forgiveness, right? They want to center on justice rather than the wish of the individual. They assume that equal compensation is more valuable than an individual's wish. So what if I don't want to imprison my sister who wronged me? Thing is, I've already forgiven her, and it will be against my will to punish that person. And even if, let's say, that forgiveness does indeed break laws, and let's say that it's a bad thing, because that's been the center of opening government's argument, right? Let's examine which is worse. Is it worse to forgive someone on my own will? Or is it worse to punish someone with the full force of the law, even if I have already forgiven that person to begin with? Thing is, opening government has been too utilitarian. They have been too legalistic throughout their arguments. And this is a bad thing. Why? Because we are forgetting why laws exist to begin with. It's to serve our will. It's to help us live normal everyday lives. But what they're doing is that they're putting a premium on objects rather than people. And this is something that is regrettable. On the other hand, our paradigm wants to center on the individual. If we want justice, so be it. But if we want to forgive another person, and if we think that forgiving another person is better than throwing them to jail, we should be allowed to place a premium on it, right? We should value the will of the individual. And this is best achieved when we place a premium on forgiveness. So moving on to my cases. My first argument is this. Forgiveness is what holds relationships together. So we as humans, okay, we need to connect with each other because we cannot live without doing so. No person can live alone, or else that person will suffer from different mental illnesses, right? We live together, okay? And aside from living together, what is another trait of humans? We are not perfect. Given that we live with each other and we are not perfect, we are always bound to do something that might sooner or later hurt someone else, hurt someone we love, hurt someone we value, right? So it doesn't mean that our relationship with that person should be broken immediately. Let's say, for example, that I'm married, right? And I need some finances, and then my wife told me to sell some of her things. And what I did was sell her dog. Of course, my wife is going to be very angry at me, right? Because that's like one of her most valuable possessions in the world. But does that mean that there should be equal compensation and my wife should also sell, say for example, my pet parrot so that she could have justice on her side? No, right? We shouldn't break up already and exchange pain with pain. After all, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right? Or maybe perhaps there's a better way. We should change. And changing, okay, we could only change if we are actually given that chance to change. The thing about government is that they assume that, hey, we shouldn't place a premium on forgiveness. We should place a premium on changing for the better. Here's the thing: how can you change for the better when the person is ignoring you throughout the whole time? Right? So what? Thing is, without relationships, we cannot live. Without forgiveness, relationships will be destroyed. Therefore, we cannot live without forgiveness. We cannot be human. We should place a premium on virtues that is beneficial to everyone. And we achieve this when we place a premium on forgiveness. So moving on to my second case. Given that forgiveness is indeed a good thing, as I have already proven in my case, and so did my leader of opposition, my second case is that we need to place a premium on something for it to be promoted, for it to be encouraged, for it to subsist throughout the generations. Thing is, let's say we do not place a premium on forgiveness. In their best case scenario, what's going to happen? Every time someone does something bad to us, we could also do the same bad thing to them, right? We will not anymore be taken advantage. We would gain material gain because that's what justice after all wants, right? Compensation, eye for an eye. Thing is, doesn't really matter. Why? Because first of all, it promotes selfish behavior. And the thing about humans is that no one ever dies happily for being selfish. We die happily when we die with the ones we love. And we could only maintain the ones we love when we forgive them for all the things they've done to us and when they forgive us for all the things we've done to them. Now let's move on to the worst case scenario of placing a premium on forgiveness. What happens is that it makes us a pushover, right? It makes us not value our own dignity over the dignity of another person, right? It's ultimately better in the end. Why? Because isn't it the most beautiful thing to see a person valuing another person more than the material compensation that one could ever have with justice? That is the most beautiful human thing. And placing a premium ultimately reinforces that good behavior. It teaches us to be humble and value our relationships over our pride. It makes us human. It makes us connect with each other, and it will allow us to live a happy life in our deathbed. That is why we should place a premium on virtues that is beneficial to everyone. And that virtue, ladies and gentlemen, is forgiveness. That is why we are proud to oppose this motion.
Here, here. opposition said that forgiveness is a virtue, but I would also like to say that forgiveness is not a currency. The opposition talked about maturity, but there have been upstanding gentlemen who committed grave crimes of against humanity. I don't want to talk about Hitler to remind you of how much of a good gentleman he was to his fellow compatriots. Now, they said we could see that this is selfish. It is selfish, but forgiveness is not good. It's not a goodness. But in its place, responsibility is better. To make people recognize and realize that to change for the better. Now, I go to my first case, which is putting a premium on forgiveness neglects social, political responsibility. One of the controversial examples of this is government indemnity, a policy wherein government cannot do anything wrong. Why? To silence the opposition and abuse their power by removing any legitimacy left in accountability. And then, if a government committed graft and corruption, then they will be practically forgiven under such a policy because it indemnifies them from doing anything wrong. What if it involves life? What if lives were at stake and there were lives lost? Will they be? They would be forgiven. What if they've committed grave mistakes in determining whether they should build a toxic waste facility in this place where the animals are endangered? They will be indemnified for that act. So what? If we allow them to do this, they will develop a habit, a culture, an endless crisis.
Don't you think that forgiveness is a responsibility for people who want to maintain the relationships?
Yes. Yeah, to maintain the relationship, but then again, it can be an abuse. Now that's where I go. That's where I go to my second case. Let's talk about families. Sometimes there are parents who abuse their partners, and their children see this behavior. Sometimes they see this go unpunished. It develops in them an understanding that forgiveness is just as expensive as a few words coming out from anybody's mouth. Now, let me stress on the importance of responsibility. Responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, requires us to be careful, to remember that we, when prioritizing forgiveness, we might not fully assess the actions of those who have done wrong. And sometimes these people, if were not properly assessed, would just do the wrongdoing over and over again. And this is not just in several historical cases. This is common in society, such as that in the Philippines, where small-time drug dealers back then, before the Duterte administration, would go unpunished after they've been sentenced. They would just be doing this exact same thing in their prison cells. So what's the point of putting them in prison if you're just going to do the exact same thing? And this, by the way, happens all around the world, not just in the Philippines, where the system is usually can be easily abused. I will not be taking any more points. So we must be. I cannot take any more points. We cannot let ourselves. Let forgiveness put a hindrance on where forgiveness begins and where responsibility ends. We must be vigilant. We must be vigilant, and we must make sure that there is a fine line between order and amnesty. Because if we allow it to be in an extreme case, if this were to be lax, then every single person, regardless of what they've done, such as that. And regardless of how bad they have done in life, would be a good person in society. You'd be seeing people killing each other in the streets and saying, "I've done a nice thing today." We wouldn't want that now, do we? I wouldn't be if we were living in a lax society now, I'd be kicking the government side in the face and saying, "Oh, forgive me, but I don't like your position in this debate." No. Of course, nobody will forgive me for that. I must be punished. I must be accordingly punished to the actions that I've committed wrong. And we have to be vigilant in that regard. And that is why we're proud to propose.
Thank you, Member of Government. Now we'll open up closing call and opposition.
First, I would like to start off our speech by going back to what the motion is really trying to say to us. They are saying that they are regretting the premium placed on forgiveness. And I believe the opening house has failed to grasp the meaning of what it means to be giving a premium to something. When we say we're giving a premium to something, we are meaning to attaching a higher value to it, and it is something that people create standards for. It is something that they take into account and give a lot of thought into before they do certain actions. And when we talk about forgiveness, we not only talk about letting go of these matters that are at hand, letting go of the mistakes and absolving the sins that they have committed. We are also enabling the people who are giving the forgiveness themselves, enabling them to let go of the emotional baggage that was placed onto them when the sin was committed against them. And so, first, a couple of rebuttals. Once again, you're saying that the opening house is saying that the forgiveness is being turned into compensation if it's put into a premium. But then again, they also stated a while ago that it's something that should be given a high value. So why would it lead to passivity if it's something people truly cherish and value and make something sacred into it? And they're also stating that it is not being it would lead to people not being punished and being absolved immediately from their sins. But let's not forget, it's something that people put standards to. It means they're choosing if a person deserves to be forgiven or not forgiven. And so for my first case, I would like to say that not everyone deserves to be fully absolved from their sins. Because as I stated a while ago, when we put a premium on something, we give thought into it. We think if these types of people deserves, depending on the gravity of their action, to be fully absolved and fully forgotten from their sins. Because in these kinds of situations, the one who are engaging in these things are the forgiver and the apologizer. The forgiver in the sense that they have to let go, once they forgive, they have to let go of the trauma that they have undergone because of the sins committed by the sinner to them. One first of small scale example, most likely reinstating what's stated by the opening house of when a lover cheats on you and tries to come back to you for asking for a second chance. You as the person who has committed the sin against you have to really give it the thought and really see if this person is worthy of a second chance. Because as stated by our opening houses, it's a way of maintaining relationships. Maintaining relationships not in the sense that for them to be with you, but also seeing if that person is still good for you and productive in your life. And it also, once again, leads them to become more self-developed, not also for them, but also for the sinner who committed. Because it will lead them to give it the thought why they should not be forgiven or absolved of their sins. It will lead them to reflect and lead them to grow and change from their sin and change from what they've done. And for my second case, when we say we are putting a premium on forgiveness, we are practicing actually the very law and standards and policies that we are having today. Because the legal justice system in itself is a perfect representation and exhibition of putting a premium on the concept of forgiveness. Because what happens in the court, what happens there is we have juries and lawyers and also the person who committed the crime and the defendant who are trying to prove to the judge if this person is worthy of being punished or worthy of being absolved from their sins or not. They have to go through this very rigorous process placed on the means of standards, placed on the means of abiding by certain laws and policies and taking oaths in order to commit the very principle that has to be achieved, which is justice. And so I would like to say that putting a premium on apologizing would lead to people determining on on if what kind of what